Hey,
Okay.
is that everybody that was in the waiting room? Seeing a nod, so yes.
Yeah, we're getting some here and there, but everyone is in as of now.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Today is May 25th. This is the Vision Task Force. We will come to order. We've got a big agenda today, lots of stuff to go through. So I'm going to not talk too long here at the opening. I do want to say thanks to everybody who's been working in the Speakers Bureau. We've been continuing to have some really good outreach. So appreciate those of you who have volunteered to do that. And as always, a reminder, all of our stuff's posted to the website. If you can't make a meeting, watch the video and you'll be able to catch yourself up. A brief programming note: our next meeting is scheduled for June 8th. We're actually doing really good, and if we all work hard today, we will, in lieu of having a meeting, be able to have breakout groups so that you won't have to block additional time on your calendar. So I'm saying that up front so that we have a good, productive, disciplined conversation so that we don't need to spill over into another meeting and then try and schedule breakout groups. So if you're really nice to Eric, then we all do our jobs. We won't have to take any more time. So having said that, and it looks like everybody's been admitted into the room now, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Those were circulated in your packets. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Going once, going twice. The minutes are approved as submitted. So we'll hand it over to Mr. Jensen. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Chair Bunn. It's been a little while. I almost feel like we need name tags now that we're getting together again. So, but just to kind of give you a quick overview and sort of set the context for this meeting, what I'd like to hit a number of things here. But first of all, before I get into that, I would like to introduce Josh Nadel. Josh, who's waving there, and well, it's in my right-hand corner. I don't know where he is on your screen. He is a new member of our firm, and he's going to be involved in this project going forward. And so I wanted him to be here so I could introduce him. He is a graduate student and is going to turn into a pumpkin in about 20 minutes. So, because he has to go to class, fancy that. In any case, I just wanted to introduce Josh. And Josh, do you want to say anything about yourself very quickly?
Just looking forward to working with everyone and getting to know you and working on this project. So nice to meet everyone.
All right. So let's talk about where we're at. So we've been in the vision statement development process, and the task force had come up with a draft vision statement, including the sub-statements of a core statement plus the focus area statements. And we got those out for community review. Thanks to Seth and KJ and Rachel and everybody else. It's been, I think Lily has had a role in that as well. And so we've received a lot of input, and I think you received that in your meeting packet. So I'm sure that everybody read all the pages of all the notes from the raw data. So, but in case you didn't, Seth did prepare a summary report that he's going to talk about here in a minute. So our hope today is that we will finalize this vision statement and that you will recommend that it be forwarded to the City Council to be considered for adoption on June 17th. And then we're off and running to start working on the action plan, which I'm hoping we'll get a little bit of time today to kind of begin that discussion. One of the things that we've been doing along the way is when people give input, they don't always give input or input in a way that, geez, this kind of wording fits into the vision statement. They may have specific ideas, specific projects. And so what our team has been doing is putting together a list of those potential strategies and actions that will go into the action plan or be considered for the action plan. So you're going to be seeing that forthcoming, but not quite ready yet for prime time. So today our objective is, as has been mentioned, is to finalize the vision statement, and time permitting, we are then going to use the remaining time to be able to do a little bit of brainstorming on strategies that could be incorporated into the action plan. Now, I want just to clarify, this is just the brainstorming exercise because we've had a lot of community input and so forth, but we'd like to give you folks the opportunity to kind of get some of your ideas on the table that we can put into that list of strategies and actions that you're going to be receiving. So then the last thing I'll mention is that assuming that we are able to conclude everything today, we would like to use June 8th as a time, since you already have it on your schedule, as a time for your original work groups, the focus area work groups, to get together again and to start work. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that more later. So, but first, why don't we find out a little bit about what came back from the survey? I'll turn it over to Seth.
Thanks, Eric. I'm gonna show my screen. Okay, I think that should be up. So we put out another survey and we got 448 responses back. We acknowledged when we made the survey that it would be a little bit more difficult to get through because we had all of the vision statements that we're asking people to read through and then providing comments on it. So as you can
Seth,
tell,
could you get closer to your microphone, please? You're a little distance for us.
okay, my microphones are in my head, so I'm gonna have to try to switch to something. Give me 1 minute.
Or just a scream because I can't hear you either.
The microphones are in my head.
about
Sounds
now?
like a Pink Floyd song of some sort.
How do I sound now?
Better,
Is this better? Okay,
but still speak up.
thank you. So we've done 3 surveys now, so I wanted to take a little look at how our surveys have been doing over time. You remember we had a really good response rate at the very beginning when we did that community satisfaction survey. We got over 1,000 responses. And since then, I think we've started to get some survey fatigue, but the content of each survey has been a little different, and I just want to acknowledge that. So between the vision input and the vision feedback, which were a little more demanding of the content we're asking about, our response numbers have been going down. Although when I look at the completion rate, it seems like we probably reached a whole lot of people. It was just a challenging survey to take this time. So I just want to acknowledge that going through here. I did a little analysis of the number of people of color that were taking the survey and tried to compare it to our Medford community profile that we put together at the beginning of this project. And now I want to acknowledge that the community profile was just Medford proper, and we're trying to reach anyone who's a member of the community, which could be outside of Medford. So this is not an exact number, but just something to compare against. We've been seeing about 14 to 15% participation from people of color on the survey, and that's based on the number of people who answer that question, and not everyone answers it. And then same for low income participation, we're hovering around 30%. And for Medford, if we calling household income under $50,000 low income, that would be about 46%. So just something to keep in mind as we continue to do outreach and where we want to continue to improve. A lot of our distribution tools were similar for this survey, but we did have one addition. We had a note in the Medford utility bill insert. So everyone who receives a utility bill had the opportunity to see that. And we did see in the survey results that quite a few people learned about the survey through the utility bill insert. So that was new and I think expanded our reach a little bit more. And again, thanks to all of you task force members who helped us share the survey through your email channels. The zip code distribution was similar. We mostly heard from people in East Medford and West Medford, which is good. We want to hear from them, but then got a good number of responses from the communities that surround Medford. Like the other surveys, we're hearing from a lot of people who have lived in Medford for over 20 years, and then have an even distribution of other people who have been here for different periods of time. And we're hearing people who both live in Medford, work in Medford, and then who come to Medford for other reasons. So that's good. Our gender distribution continues to lean more female, which is interesting. And I'm not really sure how to address that, but just to note that that's where the responses are coming from. And then age distribution, we continue to hear from people in middle age, but I'm glad that we are hearing from people above 65, considering that we're mostly using online tools. And I think reaching younger folks is going to continue to be a goal of ours. Our race and ethnicity distribution has been similar from survey to survey, kind of tracking along with that about 18% number from the beginning. And we know that we want to continue to try to reach Latino and Hispanic populations as much as we can.
I have a question. What's self-described? What does that mean? What is the covers?
It means that people could enter any of the race or ethnicity that wasn't on this list, or they could identify however they want. Does that work? Okay. And we heard from people with a range of sexual orientation identities as well. As far as language spoken at home, we did hear from folks who say they speak Russian and Spanish. I think we want the Spanish number to be higher. We continue to acknowledge that. And we did have more Vietnamese and Mandarin before, but we didn't get any of those this time around.
Can you go back? Can you back to the previous slide? On the other or multiple, I remember that in the answer choices, there was not a choices for bilingual. And I think that could be implied, like they can speak English, but they can also speak another language at home. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we meant by multiple, that they could speak both English and Spanish. And in the past, we had a lot more people who said they spoke Spanish and another language, but this time it was mostly French or German and things like that. And housing situations, we're recognizing that about 20% came from people who rent their homes, and we would like that number to be higher. We mostly heard from people who own their homes. However, our income responses, I think we heard from more people in our low income demographic this time around. So that was more inclusive. The one area that is more challenging to get to are people who are underneath that $25,000 range, but we did get some. Any questions about the demographics before I move on to the survey results? So these were the key concepts, kind of the overarching things that I pulled out as I went through all the survey responses. I think I want to acknowledge up front that most of the people, if they agreed with the vision statements, they didn't make substantive comments, or they didn't comment at all, because they had the option to just say that they strongly agreed. But a big takeaway from the survey is that most of the respondents did say that they agreed either somewhat or strongly with the draft vision statement. And those that chose to say why they agreed with it, they really affirmed words like clean, safe, family-friendly, affordable, accessible, beautiful, and diverse. A lot of people said that this sounds like a utopia, and why wouldn't you want this thing? So there are lots of people who are really supportive of it and thought that it captured what they would like for their community. Beyond that, a lot of the comments either asked for kind of more of what the vision was talking about, or they asked for more specifics. And so I think that just kind of gets at that this is a high level vision statement, and that more specifics will come out in the action plan. And we can keep those comments in mind as we start to talk about actions. But some of those comments included things like trying to name specifically the challenges associated with houselessness. We got a lot of comments saying that these sorts of, the vision, in order to be achieved, will need to address the challenges that they associate with houselessness. We got comments that appreciated the language about diversity in the draft statements, and they wanted to make that more important and make it a key component of many of the different vision statements. So they wanted to usually include words like equity and just place a high emphasis on it. Like some of you noticed last time after the last survey, it seemed some folks said that environmental values were missing, and they wanted to include some kind of values about addressing climate change or biodiversity, and the natural resources in addition to just the natural beauty of Medford. And we got comments about just kind of the long-term planning of Medford infrastructure-wise, and where different types of uses exist. So that there are mixes of residential and other uses, so that people have different transportation options, so that they don't need to get in a car to do the things they want to do. And then these last two statements were, I think, definitely in the minority, but I think I just wanted to acknowledge that there were some strong statements. That's that these vision statements didn't sound like Medford, or they didn't want to lose the Medford that they remembered, or the things that they thought made Medford what it was. And so some of those were kind of oriented around resistant to it becoming more of an urban community, or so much focus on diversity. So I think it's folks that kind of have a vision of what Medford used to be, and they want to keep it that way. And then others just made lots of comments about whether or not the statements were achievable and measurable. And they had questions about next steps, like how would these things be paid for? Who are the partners to be involved? And again, I think those are comments that'll be addressed as we move into the action plan. And just to go through each of the statements and some of the more common comments that we got on them. For the core vision statement itself, there's strong agreement on the focus on safety and healthy and being family friendly, and addressing challenges associated with houselessness. There's agree on focusing on vibrance and beauty and those aesthetics. And they asked to include the term equity in the core vision statement to place a high priority on working to help people who need more help. Just a few more comments on the core vision. They wanted to include a high priority on affordability, including both affordable housing and bringing jobs in that pay livable wages. They thought the statement should protect Medford's rural and small town characteristic values, and even if it is becoming more urban, avoid feeling urban. And they asked that the values promote environmental health, sustainability, and a way to address climate change. For the economic growth.
Any question before we move on?
Yeah, just a quick question. When I was reading through the respondent materials, someone categorized them as high, medium, and low
Yes.
in terms of prevalence, and high is many. I don't understand what many means in terms of high. So it's using two kind of ambiguous words to describe how many people said something. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. So the amount of feedback we got from one statement to the next was really relative. And so if a comment was, there was relatively more of them on that comment, then I categorized it as high. And usually that meant there was something like 20 comments, 20 or more comments to that degree or on that theme. And then medium was about like 10 to 15, and low was like a handful, like 5. And so a lot of the time I wanted to include those unique ideas that seemed like they were still relevant. But I also want to categorize the ones that seem to pop up more frequently. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. 20 doesn't seem like a lot when you're comparing it to 400 or whatever number of respondents there were. So it gives me not a false, but a different sense or perception of the actual frequency or the amount of people that either objected to or supported a certain stance.
Seth, what was the average amount of comments on a particular question? I know 400 people completed the survey.
Yeah, so thank you. So about 400 completed the survey, and then about 200 would comment on each of the statements. And so high was like, I guess you would say about over 10%. The comments were all really diverse. So it was just a way to try to like say which ones had some kind of grouping around it, and then which were just more unique.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Anything else? So in the economic growth and resiliency, this is where a lot of comments on affordable housing and livable wages came up. And sharing thoughts about economic development. And a lot of folks saw this as a place where we need to address houselessness and bring people into an affordable place where they can live. There were several comments that mentioned that they wanted to prioritize small business development over attracting Fortune 500 companies, which was named specifically in the vision statement. And then this wasn't so common, but there was several comments that just were confused by what rail access meant and if it meant passenger rail. And I think the intent was that it was freight rail. And so that came up a lot. So I just didn't know if we wanted to clarify that in the statement. Enhancing hometown. When I looked at the low income cross-section of comments for this, for some reason, this was one that they were slightly more likely to strongly agree. On everything else, it was pretty consistent with the rest of it, but just want to acknowledge that low income was more supportive of this vision statement. And they really agreed with the focus on feeling safe and family friendly, prioritizing equity for marginalized communities and meeting the needs of vulnerable populations. They wanted to include a focus on creating well-planned community with different transportation options for different ability levels and also accommodate different language needs. And they acknowledged the need to address challenges associated with houselessness. Connecting community. This included the vision to make gathering places clean, safe, and healthy and attractive. They want a transportation system that meets the needs, that is affordable and equitable for marginalized communities. They want a more emphasis on connecting Medford's diverse communities and cultures and avoiding isolation. And a lot of the time, comments on isolation were about senior citizens, not isolating them. And they emphasize planning communities to allow for active modes of transportation and creating activities that are near residential areas. Fostering safety and wellness. When I tried to look at how people of color took the survey compared to overall respondents, on this one, they were slightly more likely to be unsure about the vision statements. It wasn't a lot, but it was just slightly more, more enough to be noticeable. And I think that does speak to kind of the national conversations we're having about public safety and in our communities. And so just wanted to point that out for you. But otherwise, the majority of them strongly agreed and somewhat agreed with the statements. And they acknowledged the need to address challenges associated with houselessness, like several others. But they thought that should include treatment for drug addiction and mental health, include a vision to keep community members healthy through affordable access to exercise, fresh food, and healthcare. Include a vision to reform the public safety system and support first responders.
Seth, a quick question.
Uh-huh.
So as I was looking through these, this one is 85% strongly agree or somewhat agree.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are in the 80%.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Range in those two categories. At least it seems to me. Is what's your?
I think your audio is cutting in and out.
Your reaction to that? And
You're breaking up a bit, Denny. But if you want to type your question in the chat box, Seth can respond to it.
I think what you're getting at is that it's kind of like how to gauge the level of agreement. And again, this is not a scientific or statistically valid survey. So it's just, collecting the input that we have and using your professional judgment on what to do with it. A lot of the time I would suggest you just look at it in terms of ideas more than numbers and see if it jives with your expertise and your experience with the community. See if something resonates well with your experience, and if something is new to you, then to ask questions about it like you're doing. But for the most part, this is pretty clear that people are really happy with the vision statements, people who were able to review this. And so I think that they're really just asking for minor tweaks. And if something sparks out of this input that you think is really worth including, then you can pursue looking for ways to include it. But otherwise, I think this is really on the right track, and people are just asking for specifics that are going to come out in the action plan.
Seth, did you get a question from Denny in the chat?
I think I'm going to have to end the presentation.
Oh, never mind then.
So, but
No,
would you like to read it?
I'm good, Seth. You answered
Okay.
my question.
Great.
Denny gives a thumbs up. All right.
Thank you. All right, our last one. So promoting recreation opportunity. This is where a lot of the comments about the environment came up and wanting to protect our natural resources from effects of climate change and environmental degradation. They wanted to include the need to increase resilience from natural disasters and wildfires. They emphasized affordable access to recreation opportunities for everybody. More comments about cleanliness and safety in parks and recreation. And again, getting to specifics, they were asking for a variety, specifying kind of what those recreation opportunities would be that would be added in the future, and considering how they can address diverse needs of individuals, groups, and different cultures. Any questions about what any of these things means, or kind of interpreting the words that I'm presenting to you? Okay, thank you.
So Eric, back to you. If Seth is wrapped up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so we're assuming that you don't have any questions with regard to the results of the survey. I would like to just take a moment and ask folks if it resonated with you, or are there any surprises in what came back? Too soon after lunch?
Sounds like no surprises. Maybe
Okay.
Carol, go ahead.
You're on mute, Carol.
Thank you, sorry. I've just got a question, since I don't know how many of these you have run before. Is it surprising to have such a low number of respondents, and did we have enough time to get the first ones out, you know, in order to get more respondents? It seems to be really, really low participation.
Yeah, you know, I think it usually depends on the subject matter. Usually when I have high participation, it's because it's something that people are really worried about. And given that this is a positive subject matter, usually people are less inclined to engage as they might be. So for something like this, you know, sometimes people are really happy about 200 responses. I would say like more time is always better, and more different ways to engage is better. But I think given that it was only 2 weeks, I think this is pretty good.
What about your first initial one with customer satisfaction?
That was, you know, that was over a month time period, I think over a month. It was also our first time going out to the community on this subject. And so I think that's kind of why it is different than this time. So given that that's cut to a little less than half, I think survey fatigue and the form that we're using is kind of speaking to that.
So when you did the Hillsborough push on this, what % of respondents did you have on your first customer satisfaction piece? Would you say you got 10%, 20%, you know, that kind of thing?
That was an Eric project, so.
Yes. So we did ours a little bit differently. We actually did a public opinion, a statistically valid public opinion poll for our community satisfaction survey. So that was a different situation in that regard. I will say though that in terms of these other responses that we're getting on these last 3 surveys, they far exceed the percentages that we were able to attain in Hillsborough. And you know, I think that you know, the numbers that we're seeing are probably at least 25% more in percentage than what we had back then. Now, you know, there are a couple of considerations here. You know, we did this in 1998 and 99. So the internet was not what it is today. And so it was a lot more difficult back then in terms of being able to do direct mail and being able to reach out to community groups more physically. And so I think that does make a difference in terms of what kind of responses we're getting now. And the other thing, this is my own personal observation, is we're in a position now in our society where people are being a lot more vocal, and so I think a lot more people are stepping forward. So I personally am very happy with the response that we've received so far.
I'm encouraged to hear that because I was pretty depressed. So I thought that was really low participation for the size of Medford and Jackson County. So anyway.
Yeah.
Other questions? Eric, as we go through the vision statement and finalize them, we'll have a chance to comment and think. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And any other questions before we move on? I believe Rachel's next, Mr. Chair, to talk about Speakers Bureau.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Seth, for that great presentation. Just a quick note that our very own Christina Kruger met with a Rotary Club. I think it's Rotary Club of Bear Creek yesterday, and she said it was a really lovely presentation. And a couple questions that the group had for her was specifically, are we engaging our Asian community, and are we connecting with the downtown revitalization organizations for feedback and input? And so I think those questions really represent that they're, the community is showing great interest in spreading the word, making sure we're seeking a wide variety of feedback from our different communities and groups in Medford, and that it's important, of course, to follow up on actionable items. So I was really excited by that email, Christina. Thank you for that. So thank you for meeting with them. Everyone, just thank you again for reaching out, speaking with your groups, everyone in your circle. Keep up the good work. We sent out an email on April 27th with updated talking points, updated presentation to bring everything up to speed as of that last meeting. So let me know if for whatever reason you didn't get it, or you need me to send it your way again. In part of that, we also sent a list of community organizations that we are sending monthly newsletters out to. So if you have a second, again, take a look through that. If any group, if we happen to miss any group or you're concerned about that, reach out, let me know, and we'll be happy to add it. Because obviously we want to reach as many people as we can. So again, as you're reaching out to groups, just shoot me an email so we can make sure we're hitting some target areas, and let me know if there's anything you need.
Okay. Mr. Chair, would you like me to continue?
Back to you, Eric. Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so we're on to the next agenda item, and that is talking about the focus area statements. Now that you've had the download from the community, and what we'd like to do is to revisit the statements that we put out there to the community and take a look at them in the context of the input that you've received, determine whether or not you think that they are still accurate and responsive and in line with the community as well as your views. And then at the end of that discussion, then there'll be a question of whether you want to forward that to the council as a group. So Rachel, do I have screen share capabilities?
Yep, you should.
Okay. Oh, where did it go? That's not it. No. Of course, I had this all loaded up, ready to go. There we go. All right. So what we want to talk about now is looking at, we're going to take these in pieces, and we're going to look at the core statement first. Then we're going to look at the different focus area statements and take each one by one. With the core statement, I'll tell you that we already have a couple of suggestions on the table. There was some response from the city council, and there was also some observation from the consultant team in terms of a piece that we thought might be missing and you might want to talk about. So let's move forward. So this is the current version. This is the version that went out of the core statement that went out to the community. When council saw this draft, they had some comments, and Brian, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Thank you, Eric, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, the mayor and the council wanted me to share with all of you their sincere appreciation for the work that all of you are doing. The council since January has been meeting once a month to work on their 2021-23 biennial goals. And one of the items that is at the forefront is obviously the access, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is actually one of their biennial goals. But They were looking for some sort of statement. Excuse me, I got to put this to voicemail. They were looking for a statement at the beginning of their goals that could be used that shows the public that, yes, they are looking at DEI as a way to implement all of their goals. And so I shared the vision statement with them because I thought it was very good, very broad, encompassed a lot of what they want to do in the next biennium, and they loved it. The only comment that really came back was, that one part where it says education and employment opportunities, Medford maintains a safe, healthy, and family-friendly atmosphere. It's a long sentence. So the only comment really came was, well, is it a run-on sentence? But in general, they loved it. So that's about it, Eric, and the rest of you.
Okay. And so we have 3 options that came forward as possible ways to address that issue. And I took the liberty of going in and just highlighting where the changes are. So the first sentence obviously is the same, and it's the sentences that follow that are different. And so I would like to hear if anybody has a feeling about one option or another, or likes the original, or wants something completely different. So looking.
Comments on grammar.
What's that?
Comments for grammar, style. It's open to everybody.
Don't be shy. Looking for hands.
Mr. Densmore.
Yeah.
The only one that is of notice to me is in option 3, putting emphasis on the city seems to not fit quite as well, just in the way it looks to me. I wonder if it's a bit limiting. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way, but.
Okay, so Al, your perception is that that might refer to the city of Medford as an organization as opposed to the community.
Yes.
Okay.
It just seems like it might be not as inclusive to the partnerships that you'd want to put together to implement the action plan.
Anybody else have a thought about that? I'm looking at the screen over here that has all your faces. I'm not looking away.
Carol's got her hand raised, and then we have a couple of comments in the chat box for option 1 and support for Al.
Okay, Carol?
Yeah, I think option 1 flows well from the previous sentence and keeps it simple, keeps the city as a piece out of it. So it's the whole region. I like option 1.
All right, so we've got option 1 on the, still on the table. Option 3, it sounds like we've had some sentiment, the same sentiment that Al had.
Marta's the only one that's expressed a little bit of dissent. Do you want to say anything, or are you happy to go with the group?
Happy to go with the group.
Okay. Eric, it sounds like option 1 carries the day.
I think so. All right, so looking at the room here, I'm seeing some head nods, and I'm going to take it. All right. And Alan, you're looking particularly stoic right now, but I'm going to take that as a yes, as well as Kathy and Chris. All right. All right, so we are going to go with option 1 on that. So now the next piece related to the core statement is the one that the trying to get the right mouse here. I've got 2 going at the same time. Oops, come on. Yes, here it is. The one thing that struck us as a consultant team was on the community input was the input on in protecting and preserving the environment. And when we kind of looked through the vision statement, including the core statement and the vision focus areas, we didn't see anything that was quite as direct about that. So for discussion purposes, we're just throwing this out there and you can chew it up and spit it out and do whatever you like with it. But we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to have that conversation about whether or not you want to put something more specific in there. And I will say that there wasn't a place in the focus area statements that it really fit as well. So that's why it ended up in the core statement as a proposal. So any thoughts about that? Not seeing any.
Eric?
Oh, thank you, Brian.
So again, why we're adding or proposing to add this sentence because of comments from the Vision Task Force at the last meeting?
No, what we were looking at, if you look at Seth's report and the key concepts section, when we went down and looked at those key concepts, everything on there seemed to us to have been in some form addressed. But the environmental, talking about protecting the environment in terms of preservation and protection of natural resources, didn't seem to have an inherent place. So we were just trying to respond to what we heard from the community.
Well, I agree with what Denny Conrad has written in the chat. Seems like tacked on sentence and would not add. It just does not flow with what we just did with option 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to throw this out there and you can shoot me down if I'm wrong. I think we risk getting the vision statement too long and we have to make some decisions somewhere. I mean, I think we all agree, yeah, we want to protect the environment, but we're trying to have a good, solid, actionable plan. And I could see maybe shoehorning it into one of the sub statements, but we're getting pretty big and grandiose at the top level. So I agree. I think it feels like we kind of just put it in at the end because like an afterthought. And I don't know if that's the message that we want to send.
You could, if I may just make a suggestion, you could put in the top sentence, Medford is a vibrant, diverse, welcoming, and inclusive urban community that embraces, celebrates, and protects the stunning beauty of its environment or preserves.
That's what I was going to suggest as well. I think that would work.
Mr. Densmore, I saw you had your hand raised.
I think the last comment should carry the day, but I think the proof of what we produce in the way of actionable items will speak to the values that we are going to try to implement. And once we shift to producing plans that will produce results, the focus will shift to those areas. And if we've not done enough to respond to the issues building in the climate emergency, we'll be criticized for
it. Okay, thank you, Al.
So quick show of hands, who likes trying to work it into the first sentence? Because that seemed like a decent way of addressing it.
I agree with Adrian at the beginning. I guess I like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was thinking, after the inclusive urban community that embraces and celebrates the stunning beauty of its environment by preserving and protecting Medford's natural resources. That's what I will, and rural qualities, and period after that. Right after its environment by and then doing by preserving and protecting Medford's natural resources and rural qualities, period. That's what I would.
So some discussion about how to work it into the first sentence. Is anyone against trying to get it worked into the first sentence? Okay, so now we're just trying to figure out what the right way to do it. So lots of people support just dropping in the verb protecting into that series. That keeps it simple. Lilia wants something a little more expanded and complex. Where's everybody at on the simple solution versus a more complex thought? Raise your hands if you're for the simple addition of the verb.
Looks like we have a strong showing for that, the simple version.
So you're going to drop the word protecting. Hang on.
I think Jerry, Daniel, if I could, Jerry, you're the one that came up with the idea. Can you reiterate that?
Yes, the Jerry motion. Could you restate it?
The Jerry motion.
Yeah. What I said was where it says and inclusive urban community that embraces, comma, celebrates, comma, and preserves the stunning beauty of its environment.
Yeah, so you're adding the words and preserves, and you take out the and before celebrates.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Does that work for folks? All right, I'm getting thumbs up, seeing lots of thumbs up. Lilia, yeah, you're good. Okay. And there is a dog that is also agreeing. So,
Mr. Montero, did you have a question or were you thumbs? Was that an affirmation?
Affirmation.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. So we are not going with the highlighted version, which I just threw out there for discussion and it worked. And we will make that change at the beginning, and it says after community that embraces, comma, celebrates, comma, and protects the stunning beauty of its environment. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is Sandy actually has all of these statements ready for discussion so we can kind of edit in place. We wanted to talk about these two things first. So I'm going to bow out, and Sandy, are you prepared to put the core statement in right now? Okay. So, and if we can just focus in on the core statement for just a moment, can you just bring that? Okay, so the changes aren't quite reflected here yet, but so Sandy, if we can just type in so we can get agreement here. Yeah, if we could put that there and then option 1 into the statement so we can look at it as a whole. You're doing it the easy way. Okay. All right, so while Sandy's kind of getting this back in place, are there any other changes that anybody wants to make to the core statement at this time, or are we at a point where you're prepared to move that to the council?
Are we moving the sub-statements to the council, Eric, or just the top level one?
I would suggest that we move all of them together once we get through all the discussion.
That was my question, was we're also sending the sub ones for adoption in the same pack.
That is correct. That is correct. It'll all be under the umbrella of the vision statement with all of the sub-statements. But I'm taking these piecemeal. And
so any objection to tentatively locking the master statement? Doesn't look like it.
Okay. All right, so Sandy, we can probably just move on to the next one. Fostering economic growth and resiliency. If we can kind of bring that up, Sandy, so it's all together. Okay, do we have, I don't think we have the full fostering economic growth and resiliency statement there. Okay, there we go. All right, so based on the comments that we received and the discussion that the task force has had, is there anything in this statement now that you think needs to be tweaked, revised, corrected?
Seth, can you just remind us real quick out of your last set of survey data as we go through these, what were like the main 2 or 3 things that you saw in the comments for each of these sub? Sorry to put you on the spot, but.
Yeah, no, I think the main thing about this was affordability. So just trying to make sure that Medford is affordable, and also that any economic benefits that are generated benefit vulnerable people.
I have a quick question because I know this is the first one we're looking at, but this seems really long. And I'm wondering if the others are the same length.
This is actually the longest of the statements that we have. And I know that the economic group really grappled with this to hone this down. So if anybody from the economic group wanted to make a comment about that.
This is Jerry. Yeah, we grappled with it too. We understand it's a little bit longer, but when you're talking about economic growth and resiliency, you wanted to kind of like the vision statement that we just had, you know, there were some missing elements such as the environment, and we didn't want to miss anything. Although this is one of those vision statements that if you ask 10 different people what their vision statement for economic development is, or growth or resiliency, you're going to get 10 different answers. So this was much longer than what we originally, this is much shorter than what we originally came up with. So this is the reduced version. We're all ears if somebody thinks they can cut something out while keeping the integrity of the statement, we're all for it. I don't know if Bill or anybody else has anything to add on that, Mike?
Yeah.
Marta?
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. It's long, but I guess the lens that we look through, at least I look through.
Are you on mute, sir?
No, I got him, Eric.
Doesn't show mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the lenses that I looked through on this economic growth and resiliency plan was.
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
right,
try again.
Yeah, try again.
Okay, so what we looked at was through the lens of like a site selection firm. Somebody's sitting somewhere looking at, well, is that a good place, a good candidate to grow my business? And that isn't necessarily limited to Fortune 500 companies. You know, people move here for a whole variety of reasons. And these are some of the issues that are going to be important to them. So as an example, it calls out education. Well, a trained workforce is just integral to any kind of economic development. Another issue has to do with housing. We've heard plenty about the housing affordability crisis here. So with this statement being that there would be a variety of housing types, that seemed important to us. And then to make certain that in kind of laying out the diversity of economic activities, we didn't give the appearance that it was excluding locals. So I realize it's long, but we struggled mightily to try and get this as concise but as inclusive as we could get it.
Marta?
I wanted to support that. While it's long, it's encompassing. We had a good discussion heading into it. I don't know if we really need to clarify the rail access. I feel like narrowing it down to either freight or passenger would actually detract from the overall aspirational, would like to have rail access sentiment that the group had.
Okay.
So just stepping through the comments for everyone, is everyone okay leaving rail access the way it's written? No strong objections on that? Okay. And then the other comment that I recall is the Fortune 500 companies. And I think that, to me, it's more of a phrasing issue. I would probably flip that sentence so we say startups, small businesses, and Fortune 500 companies have the opportunity for growth, so that it doesn't give the appearance that Fortune 500 companies are first. Does that hit the mark for people? Generally seeing thumbs up.
Okay.
I think, Seth, does that tick off all the major things from the responses?
Yeah, I think you got it.
Okay. All right. So what Sandy's got there, startups, comma, small businesses, comma, and Fortune 500 companies have the opportunity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is that right? All right. Got a thumbs up. Looking at a thumbs up. Okay, good, good. All right. Any other thoughts or changes at this point? Are you folks comfortable with this being the vision statement that moves forward for adoption? Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. All right. Thanks for coming back, Alan, giving me thumbs up there. And so it looks like we've got it, Mr. Chair. I think we can move on to the next one. And enhancing hometown. So Seth, why don't we just circle back to put you on the spot again. Again, the major themes coming out of enhancing hometown.
Well, there's a lot of strong agreement with it, particularly with the sentiments around feeling safe and family friendly.
Are you on mute?
No, I guess, can you hear me? Okay. So there's strong. Okay. It looks like Eric's having audio problems. So good job on this one. I think you've got all the points. There's more just like emphasizing the things that are in here. So again, trying to prioritize benefits to vulnerable populations. And I'm trying to remember if
looking through the summary notes here, Seth, you talk about, there were comments about we need to call out addressing houselessness a little bit more directly on this one.
Yes, and so I think that's a judgment call because I know that was a sentiment in all of these things. So it was things that people asked for. And again, I think that could be something that's explained in the action plan. So I think it's just how, what does this task force think? How specific does it need to be?
So first we'll go to that question. Does anybody see the need to hit homelessness or houselessness a little more specifically in this statement? And then Denny's got a good question to follow up on that. Awfully quiet.
Yeah, my question is, and maybe it's just a rhetorical question. Do we need to say in the year 2040 if it's a 2040 vision every single time? I mean, that's one way to make it a little shorter, every one of them.
It's a consistency that is helpful to kind of maintain through all the statements, to emphasize that this statement is talking about the year 2040.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Is there any other comments?
Then I don't see, I don't see the house. Oh, there it is. Okay, I was looking houses. You mean to mention it in here, to talk about it?
It was something that came out of the survey that maybe we should mention it in this subsection. I don't know if that's appropriate, but just wanted to make sure we're responding to the feedback.
Brian? Oh, sorry.
I like, the suggestion to make it part of the action plan. Because we're still going to be revisiting all of those comments when we're developing the action plan.
Yeah. One of the things also to consider here is that the vision statement is supposed to be the piece of your vision that's going to carry through for the period of this vision to 2040. It's the action plan that is more flexible and can change over time to reflect current community needs. And so when you're thinking about what you're putting into the vision statement, you're also wanting to look at trying to not become too time-stamped in terms of issues that maybe, hopefully, will be addressed in some form.
How about in the piece where we're talking about affordable housing? I do agree it has to be included because we can't ignore it. It's a reality. So somehow, I think it has to be somewhere in there because we're dealing with it. Maybe by 2040, we won't have any houseless people, but at this time that we're working on it, maybe on the part where it says affordable housing, somewhere in there, we need to name it.
Okay. Other thoughts on that? Mr. Chair, you look like you had a thought.
I'm trying to form it into a sentence, but I don't know how to. I think what Lily is trying to say is we want to express the sense that everyone is housed in 2040 because it's a statement of the ideal state. So you could flip it around to housing is affordable. We have strong schools, things like that. But I don't know if that works rhetorically. So
Mike has his hand up.
Yeah, I think it is an issue that we need to deal with, but I think in the overarching statement, it provides affordable housing. Well, that's inclusive. And I think at least it would be, I think, more constructive to have the elimination or implementation of some means by which we can eliminate houselessness in our strategies.
Yeah. So, Mike, you're saying that it is it's inherent enough that it can be addressed in the action planning stage.
I believe it is.
Okay. Anybody else? Mike, are you still just keeping your hand up? Stretching.
Yeah, sorry about that. Forgot.
Oh, no worries. Tom? You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. What about adding in the first paragraph, second sentence, where it says, is a place where all generations, races, could be, income levels and cultures are welcomed.
Okay, income levels and cultures are welcome. So inserting income levels into that. Okay. All right, so there's a suggestion. Bill?
Yeah, I guess I would stress appropriate housing options, just to that point that, in 2040, we better have the appropriate housing options, whether it's a manor type environment, affordable apartments, other subdivisions that are meeting the expectations of communities. I just think it's a little broader than just saying affordable housing. I think we want to be known as a place that has the type of housing that meets Medford's needs. And I think by just having affordable, that doesn't do it for me, because some people don't care about affordable housing. They want, you know, a certain lifestyle. They want, you know, a swimming pool. They want apartments. They want, you know, recreational centers. They want whatever. So I just think it's a little too narrow, just putting affordable.
Bill, would you have a recommendation on how to address that?
Appropriate housing, you know, subsidy appropriate for affordable is just one way to think about it, or something like that.
Appropriate instead of affordable?
Yeah.
Okay, so what, we're gonna put these on the table. We're gonna come back to these suggestions. So, all right, any other thoughts in that regard? Otherwise, I'd like to come back and look at these two options here, and see whether they resonate with the rest of the group. So does anybody want to advocate for one or both of these options as a way to address this issue?
I like number one. I don't know that it specifically addresses the issue, but I think it's important to say. We talk a lot about being inclusive, and I think it's worth noting that you're welcome regardless of your paycheck or income level. I think it's a good addition.
Okay, so income levels make sense to you. How about the rest of you? Does that look like a reasonable addition? And I'm not talking about exclusive of the other. I'm just talking about this one piece. Al has given me the first thumbs up. And okay, Brian, Marta, Chris.
I tried
Mike?
raising my hand. Sorry.
Oh, you were raising your hand. Sorry.
Yeah. My only issue with that statement is you don't welcome an income level, you welcome people of an income level, which is not the case with generation and rates. Like, you welcome them. You don't welcome any income level. So I feel like something's missing if we're going to keep that. Another noun or something else. I like the inclusivity. The wording, I feel like, needs to be wordsmithed, and I'm trying to figure out how.
Okay, so let's come back to that. If everybody is okay with income levels, then we can come back to try and address Marta's point if others feel the same way. So Mike, you've got your hand up. Or is that from before again?
That was a reactionary.
Oh, okay. All right, just a reflex. Okay, got it. Bill?
Eric, yeah, Eric, I guess, you know, the one thing that comes to mind is a lot of our wealth that we have in our community right now is because people decided to come here to live, you know, particularly in this case, you know, the classic example, Californians could sell their house for a lot of money, come up here, buy an appropriate house, and that's their treasure. That's their family's asset, is this new house that they have here in our valley. And to a certain degree, they will do that if they know that that treasure is going to retain value or increase in value. And I don't know quite how to put that into words, but the reality is the reason that our housing stock is maybe at a higher value than would normally be here if we weren't adjacent to, you know, the state of California or something like that. I don't know how we can put that in, but I think it's something that really helps our community, because it allows us to have quality housing stock that then, quite honestly, provides a property tax base that allows us to be able to have the services that we want for our community. So, but you know, again, if we were a place where nobody in their right mind would want to retire to, you know, okay. I don't think that's the reality we have.
So, Bill, are you trying to say, as opposed to appropriate housing options, that we have diverse housing options? I know we use the word diverse a lot, but housing's a spectrum, and we want to hit all of it because we need all of it.
I concur with that. To me, I want great apartments. I want great condominiums. I want great single family, you know, all the way up, you know. I want the cottages.
To studio, senior care, to places with kids. We want to We want the full spectrum of housing, not a monoculture.
Agreed.
Okay, so we're gonna, let's just hold that. Thank you, Sandy, for just typing it in there as a placeholder for a moment, because I really would like to kind of come to a conclusion on the income levels real quick, and then we can just move on to that, because they're turning out to be somewhat separate issues.
Kathy's got a good suggestion in the chat box to respond to Marta.
Great.
If we rephrase it to people of all generations, races, income levels, and cultures, that puts the emphasis on the individual, not the characteristic. Marta, looks like a thumbs up there. I think it's great. No objections.
Thumbs up. All right. I'm seeing thumbs up. Lilia, thumbs up. Thank you for using the little symbols. Those are easier to see. Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, I'm going to suggest we're going to move on from that, and we're going to talk about the bottom piece. Okay. So if everybody's okay with people of all generations, races, income levels, and cultures are welcomed and embraced as value citizens in the broader community, let's get back to the appropriate, diverse, or affordable housing. The last suggestion of putting diverse in from the chair, how do people feel about that as a replacement for appropriate or affordable? Thumbs up from Kara.
Okay with that.
Okay, anybody else? Marta?
I second Dr. Kathy Kemper-Pell's suggestion in chat, supporting full spectrum of housing options. It could also be a diverse blend of housing options.
Okay. All right, so a diverse blend of housing options would be the start of that sentence, correct? Is that what you meant, Marta? And sorry, I'm trying to watch people and watch the chat box. It gets confusing sometimes. Okay, so if we go with a diverse blend of housing options and then et cetera, does that work for folks? Does that get at the issue at hand here? Kathy, was that a thumbs up? Yes. Anybody else? Jerry, thank you. Everybody else is somewhat lukewarm. Okay, I better check the chat. All right. So, all right. Well, unless anybody has a major objection at this point, we're gonna hold on to that language. So, given that, are you comfortable with these changes with recommending this language moving forward? If you do the thumbs up, okay, okay. All right, Chris. It looks like most people have thumbs up here. This is, I have to tell you that working with two different screens is more difficult than working a room with a U-shaped table. I'll be glad when we get back in person. Okay, well, great. Well, I am going to take that as a yes from the group, that you are comfortable with the language as edited to be able to move forward, and recommend that to the council. Let's move on to connecting community. And looking at that, Seth, what would you say were the main highlights there that you would call out?
You know, there's agreement about gathering places and want to make sure that they are clean, safe, healthy, and attractive. There is comments about making sure the transportation can serve vulnerable populations. Making sure communities are connected and not isolated. And being able to access different modes of transportation choices. and having walkable communities, being near activities near homes.
Okay, so with that, do you folks feel that the current statement addresses those issues to the point that they need to be addressed in a vision statement? All right, Tom, thank you. All right.
This was my team statement, so I think it's perfect.
You think it's perfect? Yes. Is the chair's statement perfect? Looks like, yes. Marta, are you still sort of thinking? You look like you're, no? Thumbs up.
You
All
know,
right.
Eric, we kind of hashed through this as a group last time about, we talk in that final paragraph, multimodal, active transportation. Those are technical words, but they really do describe what the commentary from the public is getting at. It just got to be a little bit of a policy wonk to debug it, but I think it's appropriate for what we're doing here.
Okay. Anybody want to disagree? Al? Al?
Not necessarily disagreeing, but looking in that first phrase of clean, safe, healthy, and attractive as a modifier to the gathering places may be some emphasis that we might, in our current circumstance, appreciate. I don't have strong feelings, but in going to the park's dedication for our newest park on Saturday and hearing the maintenance folks telling me that we spend 50 to 70% of our maintenance time cleaning up trash, I think this is a monster issue we're going to have to address. And anytime that we find a way to emphasize our goals, that I think this might be helpful.
So Al, would you like to say clean and safe gathering places?
I'm just thinking a modifier here might provide some emphasis that people will notice.
Okay, so clean and safe gathering places. Okay. Anybody else have a feeling about that one way or the other? No? All right, so do we want to just give a thumbs up and move on? And I've got a thumbs up from the chair. So
is anyone against cleanliness? You can vote anonymously.
Yeah, if you want to make a minority report against cleanliness, we could probably work that in.
After a year in quarantine with 2 little kids, I have very conflicting feelings about it. So,
okay, very good. All right. So with that, unless there are any other comments, I guess I better check chat box. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we're going to move on unless you hear any differently. All right, so fostering safety and wellness. Going back to the takeaways that we have here, Seth.
This is another one where I think maybe people got specific and we can decide if it needs to be brought into the action plan. But again, addressing challenges associated with houselessness, and they were specifically talking about trying to address drug addiction and mental health, which I think gets at people feeling safe in their communities. And that was the largest comment, but then also just continuing to make sure we have affordable access to our spaces.
Okay. So, yeah, Denny.
Yeah, being in healthcare is a profession. Treatments for drug addiction and mental health are specific types of issues that are captured, I believe, in the idea of healthcare, preventive services, and education, and high quality healthcare in particular. And I think we should be careful not to isolate specific issues that we're dealing with today and keep it a little bit broader and then change the focus and the tactical plans if need be. Because what we might be working on this year may be different than 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So the idea of having great accessible healthcare, I think, is from a broader perspective a better way to look at it.
And would you change the way that that's written in any way?
No, I would leave it like it is.
Okay, all right. Kathy? Oh, Kathy's got a thumbs up. Thumbs up. Anyone else have comments? Okay.
Hey, I just wanna, this is actually a joke, but I will hear over here because working with the police on the first line where it says in the year 2040, people feel safe in their lock homes. You have to have it lock, please, lock your house. That's what. So I wanted to say, because a lot of people doesn't lock their house, and that's how they take advantage of them.
Yeah, okay.
Don't put it in there, but I just wanted to tell you.
Got that.
It'll be an
Thanks,
action
Julia.
plan.
Yeah, and Denny, is your hand still up?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, so with that, any opposition to moving on and recommending this one? Okay, looks good. All right, we're moving on, folks. Let's get to the last one, promoting recreation opportunity. Seth.
Yeah, this is where most of the environmental comments came up. So I don't know if you want to bring up the subject of from the core statement, if a more specific statement belongs here, but wanting to protect natural resources, addressing climate change, environmental degradation.
Okay. And so anything else, Seth?
There were comments about wildfires in this section, which I think is kind of addressed in one of the other subsections, maybe the one before about wellness. But just how wildfires are affecting people's ability to be outdoors.
Okay.
So Eric, I do have a comment on that. I already saw the word Medford is the heart of the Rogue Valley. Well, I went to Phoenix on Sunday, and that's what it says on the sign, on the big sign. It says, "Welcome to Phoenix." It says the heart of the Rogue Valley. And I knew I was having a meeting today, so we gotta find another word because they already have it. It's taken. So it says, "Welcome to Phoenix, the heart of the Rogue Valley." And I thought, uh-oh.
I thought, Lilia, you were going to say that they had a sign saying that Medford is the heart of the Rogue Valley. It's just kind of a support statement. So,
Eric?
Yes.
Should this one start with in the year 2040?
Thank you. Yes. Good catch, Brian. All right. So for consistency's sake, we're adding that. And any other thoughts? Eli, I know you really had the heart of the Rogue Valley as one of your main points.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that a little bit. It is our city tagline, and to your point about Phoenix, yeah, they are using it. They're not supposed to. We have the trademark on that, and we're dealing with that currently.
Okay, so kidney. Okay, not quite sure where that came from. All right. All right. So any other thoughts? I mean, the environmental thing we've talked about, and the reason that we didn't originally propose doing anything with it here is because this is titled promoting recreation opportunity. And so it didn't seem like it really kind of fit in here. So any last comments before we sign off on this? Seeing none. Okay. Oh, Marta?
Yes, and I was a part of this group, and now I'm kicking myself for not having caught this earlier. In the first sentence of the middle paragraph, recreational is there twice.
Good point. So with an exceptional climate and natural beauty, Medford is the recreational hub of the West, offering a number of world-class recreational assets.
Take out the second recreational.
Yeah, that's my thought.
Okay. And then, so that'll be inherent then, since you started off with recreational hub. So, all right. Your parks experience has come in handy, Brian. Thank you. So any other observations like that? That was a good one, as well as all the other ones before. All right, so not gonna beat this to death. Shall we move on? Mr. Chair, are you comfortable moving on?
I'm comfortable moving on. That takes us, do you have anything before we vote, Eric?
No, sir.
So we are a duly constituted body making a formal recommendation to the city council. So we'll need to have a vote. It's on the agenda, so we don't need a motion. The way that what we're going to vote on is to recommend the core statement and the focus area statements as amended. Is there any question on what we're voting on? Everybody's clear? This will be a voice vote, so you can unmute yourselves. All those in favor of recommending the statements to council, say aye.
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 And any opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. And that brings us to our break, a full 8 minutes ahead of schedule. So we are doing really, really well. Let's recess until 3:40. Give you just under 10 minutes. That work for everybody? 3:40. Okay, Eric, you're going to walk us through the action plan. Now we have to figure out how to do all the stuff that we talked about in the vision statement. So
That's
very
right.
straightforward process.
Yeah, no, you've had an opportunity now to be aspirational, and now you got to figure out how it's going to work. How are you going to build all this? So as we move toward the action planning, I want to sort of set a little bit of a context. I did at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm going to give you a little more detail now. And so this is, see if I can do the share thing again. So you all got this in your packets. And this kind of outlines how it's going to go, and but I'm going to take you away from all of this, all of the machinations of these little details here, and focus in on the current slide. Oh. All right. So this is where we're headed from here. We're going to, on June 8th, instead of having a meeting, we're going to have the original focus area groups get together. And your charge on June 8th, and it's going to be on this at the same time that we'd normally meet. And we'll have one Zoom link for you to chime in. So you don't have to add anything to your calendar. You're just going to be doing something a little bit different. And you'll come in, and then Rachel's going to put you into your respective groups. So you will be using your time on June 8th to start drafting strategies for the vision statements that will have been adopted at that, or that will be slated for adoption on June 17th. So the idea being that your work groups will, just like you did with the action planning, but this time we gave you more time in advance. And so hopefully it's not quite as disruptive as it was last time when we said, hey, you've got 2 days. So we'll talk a little bit more about what's going to happen on that day. After that, you're going to bring back those strategies and we're going to put them in front of all the task force on June 22nd. And on June 22nd, we will talk about the strategies that have been proposed and we'll start working through that discussion. That will be followed up by another task force meeting on July 13th. And we will continue the discussion because I can tell you this takes longer than you might think to put all this together and to get to an agreement. But I'm optimistic with this group. We can do this in 2 sessions. And so we'll come up with a series of draft strategies by July 13th. And then we're going to move on and talk about actions. And we'll start on July 13th, time permitting, and then we'll carry that over into the meeting on August 3rd. And then we'll take a break. And we're going to take those action plan items and we're going to take them out for community review, just like we did with the vision statement. And so Seth and his team are going to work on taking this out, both in terms of a survey format from September 7th to 17th. You'll notice there's a little bit of a gap here between August 3rd and September 7th. And that's on purpose because we know people tend to take vacations in August. And you folks have been working really hard and we want you to take a break. In the meantime, the team's going to be working really hard to get the survey in a way that organized in a way that's going to be easy for the public to be able to respond to and digest. In addition to that, Seth is working on a workshop, if you will, or that we'll hold during that period of time. And we're still working on the particulars of that, but all that will happen between September 7th and 17th. That information comes back. In the meantime, we will also have been talking about lead partners. And if you recall, lead partners are I see your hand, Tom, I'm going to get to you in just a sec. Lead partners are the organizations that agree to champion or facilitate the respective actions. And we're going to need to be going out to those. If they're not represented in this group, we're going to be needing to go out to those groups and make sure that they're willing to sign on to it going forward. We'll come, okay, so I'll take a break here. Tom, what was your question?
It's a request, and this may hit a brick wall, but not only did I hear today, but I've heard in a couple of the public speaking meetings that the public is wondering where we get our statistical viability with responses that they don't seem to believe are they don't amount to many. And I heard earlier today that we got a much better response when we had more time. Is there any way to stretch that survey number 3 to add more time?
I'll defer, excuse me, a little bit to Seth on this, but I'll tell you the original thinking was Labor Day is September 6th. And can we get the attention of the community before that is a question. But Seth, what do you think?
I think more time always works in our favor. And I think, I mean, I don't mean to put it back to you, Eric, but I think it's kind of a question of like, can we get what else we need done together in terms of our meetings and things like that. So I think if we can get the survey finished earlier, then we can absolutely get it out earlier.
Yeah.
It would be nice. It would be nice to be able to proudly say the response percentages we got from people. If there's some way to improve that number, it improves our viability down in November, December when we're putting this out there.
Seth,
So I'll leave that alone.
Seth, just for my own education, other than time, I got to assume the way to boost response is by throwing money at it and having you do things. So is that, if the council or the committee was interested in really trying to boost our response rate, maybe at the next meeting or at the next time we get together as the executive team, could you have some thoughts about different things we could do to boost our response rate?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And my initial thought is if we can, we've got enough time between August 3rd and September 7th that we can probably start some things early. It's just a question of is that timing going to work from a public standpoint? But we'll talk about it as a team and with the core team and see where we want to go. If we expand on the other side, we're going to have a domino effect on meetings. And we did that once and I was trying to avoid doing that again. So Tom, did you have another point?
No, thanks for listening to that.
No, thank you. Very valid point. So, all right. So once we've got the comments back, then we'll do another review on October 5th of the action plan, the same way did today with the vision statement. Whoops. I have to stop gesturing with my hands. Modify the action plan accordingly. And then by October 26th, we should be able to wrap up the action plan. And we're also going to start talking about the implementation framework and look at what kind of implementation framework you want to put in place to ensure that the vision is going to come to reality. And then that all wraps up on November 16th. So that's kind of where we're going from here. So, and like a math class, as I've always said, we're kind of building on everything. So we're building on the vision statement, building the strategies, and then building the action. So that's the game plan. Before we get into the work group exercise, though, what I'd like to do is kind of reiterate, and you've seen this already, but I want to reiterate this, and this was in your packet, and it was in your packet, I believe, in the last one, but it's an important guide on the plan elements and what the purpose of the plan elements. And I would direct your attention to the action plan and what we're trying to achieve with the strategies and with the actions. And I apologize for the repetition, but I've sort of found that sometimes it's helpful just to kind of go back and revisit, like in a math class, you go back and revisit what you did last year. So strategies are intended to set a direction for implementing a vision statement, and they need to be based on the text of the vision statement. There has to be something in there that is inherent that will allow you to put a strategy toward helping to support that statement in the vision statement. And it doesn't have to be super tight, super specific. We're really looking more for intent of the vision statement. And strategies for them to be able to be to move forward have to have an action item that supports it. Because if it doesn't have an action item, it doesn't have wheels to move it forward. And strategies do not ID a specific project or program, but rather a direction for future policy and operational decision-making. So, and then the actions support and implement one or more aspects of the strategy. Again, it is the on-the-ground activities. It's the projects, the programs, the tasks, the activities that make it happen. And it identifies an outcome, and there has to be a champion of that. And the champion will be an organizational member in your community. I have only in one visioning process had an individual take that on. But, and I'll tell you, it was the city manager of Lebanon, and he wanted to restore a totem pole. And he got an action in there that he was going to restore the totem pole, and he did. So, but that's the only time I've ever seen an individual. You need to have that champion. You have to have it written in a way that has the potential capability and resources of the community or local government to do it. Not that they've already been dedicated, but that the potential is there for that to be able to happen. And language should always be positive, neutral, succinct, and broad enough, allowing the implementing entity flexibility to get at the intent. So you get too specific. I think I mentioned once before when we were doing Hillsborough's vision, one of the early renditions of an action, somebody said, we need this program and it's going to have this many FTE and it's going to have this budget. And we had, no, things change. You don't want to get down to talking about how many FTE and what the budget is, but you do want to talk about what the intent is. Okay. Then just with a little more specificity in drafting, this is just some guidelines in terms of drafting strategies, again, setting a direction, but you want to make sure that it's short. It should be able to be described in one sentence or one phrase. If you end up with a paragraph, you're going to end up with a problem. It has to be based on specific text from the vision statement, which I mentioned. One or more actions, does not identify a project program, and is not negative or subjective in terminology. And then we have actions, and these are much more specific, and I'm not going to go into that because today we are going to work on strategies. Now, one of the things that that you haven't had an opportunity to do as a group is to just brainstorm, not come up with the strategies that you want to move forward to the whole group. You haven't had a chance to kind of brainstorm some of the ideas that you'd like to throw out on the table. And so what we would like you to do today is get back into your focus groups if you thought you were, or your focus area work groups. If you thought you were done with those folks, you're not. You're going to work together again. And we would like you to get together and just brainstorm ideas. And they can be contradictory to each other. You don't need to build consensus. All you need to do is to create strategies that fit the intent of what a strategy is supposed to do. And what we're going to do is we're going to take those and we're going to put those in the long list of strategies and actions that you're going to get prior to June 8th. To use as fodder for developing the strategies that you're going to move forward to the rest of the task force on June 22nd. Clear as mud? All right. So the where we go from here is the work group exercise. So what we're going to break you up into groups, and Rachel has a magic button, and when she presses it, you're going to disappear and you're going to end up in your group. And we're going to have, like I said, have the same groups that we had before. We want you to, again, brainstorm potential strategies, use the guide if you need to help you develop those. Base it on, make sure you're basing your ideas on the focus area statement. Prepare, have somebody responsible for preparing a list that you can give to the project team so that we can add it to the idea bank. And actions inevitably come up, even though you're talking about strategies. If you come up with an action idea, just put it in a parking lot, write that down. We'll add that as well. So that's it. These are the groups, if you've forgotten. Marta, I think we originally had you down in promoting recreation opportunity, but since you had participated with the economic group as well, we're putting you in the economic group today. But this should be the same group. So you'll have roughly a little over a half an hour to be able to work on this. So questions?
A quick note, Eric, just so
Yes.
you're aware, 2 of our groups only have 2 people present right now. That's enhancing hometown and promoting recreation opportunity. So I don't know if those folks in those teams, if you want to just move on with the 2 of you, or if what you want to do about that, Eric.
I think given my recommendation is as long as we've got 2, let's keep the groups as they are because they have ownership of the vision focus areas and have an understanding of what the legislative intent, so to speak, is behind those. So let's keep folks in their areas. Any other questions? Yes, Al.
As we start to break down into these subgroups, I really would like to plead for an opportunity for those of us who've been vaccinated to be able to sit down physically and take the materials that we have and try to work on these projects as a subcommittee. Because right now I'm just buzzing with these materials in different formats inside my computer. And I have a very simple and non-reliable printer, so I can't print this stuff out at the drop of a hat. And I'm trying to do the best job I can in staying positive in this, but this goes against every previous experience I've had in 50 years of trying to get solid stuff done. And I'm just pleading for us to be able to do this in some other way.
That discussion is coming at the very end of this meeting, consistent with the updated guidance, because I'm on the same page.
Okay, so we'll talk about that a little more, Al. Okay, any other thoughts before you go off to your respective groups for at least this time digitally? No? Okay. Well, Rachel, I think it's time. And you'll have until, actually you'll have until about 4:45.
All right, you've all been invited, so you'll probably have to click on join, but you should have been invited by now. Okay, we got everyone in.
Excellent. Good work. So
I'm gonna just broadcast a message to them all, a reminder to take their own notes.
yes, I thought about splitting this up and we hadn't really worked that out. So I thought they could take their own notes and send them to us. That that would be ideal. So good. Well, folks, any thoughts?
I think there's I think Seth, you did a really good job talking to the survey and kind of talking about the thoughtfulness of the survey and how the numbers necessarily don't reflect some of the feedback that we get, as well as when we have a lot of questions and more in-depth questions like this past one we have, we're not going to get the return that we had on the first one. we had, you know, the average time, 13 minutes is a long time for people to spend on something.
I think we've got everybody back. And thanks for going through that exercise. And I know I dropped in on everybody for just a few minutes, and it was interesting. Every group was very different in the way that they were approaching things. And but hopefully it was an exercise that at least got your mind kind of thinking. And I know, at least in the case of one group, it was particularly frustrating trying to do this by Zoom. And hopefully we'll be able to see some people in person here before too long. So on that fine note, by the way, just make sure you've got somebody who's been assigned to send either myself or Rachel the list of ideas that you have, and so that we can include that in the longer list and go from there. But with that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
And all the group leads know that Eric has a new email address too. So don't forget that when you send it, like I almost did. Okay, that pretty much wraps up our work for today. Like Eric said, our next meeting on June 8th is not going to be a meeting of the full team. It's just for our breakout groups, and he'll send additional instructions. But I think it is worth discussing Al's point about getting together in person. All the committees and boards I'm on are having this talk right now. Most people are vaccinated, restrictions are being lifted. Do we want to start going back to in-person work? And I'm not going to push it one way or the other, but I am very curious where the sense of the group is on this.
Well, I will speak for Brett Champion. So I just came off of an 8-hour Zoom experience today, and I already was at saturation point. And so kudos, thank you team for getting me in and out of the breakout room. We had some struggles, but the idea of meeting in person at the Medford School District's been doing that for a while in person with all these kids and all these things. And I think Lilia can attest that our board meetings are better when they're in person. Our thinking is clearer when it's in person. And just having done the two, I personally am very much in favor of doing things in person if we can.
Okay, others?
I am in favor of in person. It does make a difference.
Alan gives a thumbs up.
I agree.
Is anyone like radically against going back to in-person meetings?
Daniel, I think it, from my perspective, depends on how comfortable everybody is. And,
Yeah.
you know, whether everybody in the group is vaccinated. Some are very concerned, some have underlying conditions that make them more vulnerable. So I guess in each of the work groups, they'd have to determine, is everybody in the group vaccinated? Is everybody in the group comfortable?
So here's what we'll do. Eric, let's either have you send a note out to everyone so that people can respond individually, or find some way of people being able to express if they're comfortable or not. That will let us get a plan together for the next group of meetings. It would be nice to do the breakout meetings in person at least. I think we'll need to coordinate with the city about how to do the distancing for the little groups. It's kind of an in-between step. And then if we have people that are uncomfortable or for whatever reason aren't in a position where they can get together personally, if it's small groups, you can have one person still joined by Zoom. If there's only 2 or 3 other people, that'll work versus the whole committee. So I think as a tentative set of direction, I'll work with the staff here to reach out to see where everybody's at on an individual confidential basis. And if it looks like we can move forward, we'll try to get that set up for our next set of work group meetings. Does that generally make sense to everybody?
And then Daniel, I'll just add that if your work group decides it's easiest to meet on Zoom, I can facilitate a meeting for you all.
Yeah. So we'll figure out a way to reach out to everybody. Give us a few days. Our next meeting's not till June 8th. For scheduling purposes, just know that you're blocked from 2 to 5 on the 8th, and we will be in contact.
Daniel, and I just want to add about our board meetings. We still wear a mask. We're in person. We wear a face mask, and we are about 6 feet apart. So we still have safety precautions in place, but we're in person.
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference.
No, we can figure out how to distance it. We have the spaces at City Hall, and especially if we're working in our breakout groups, I think it's worth making the effort to figure it out. It means some travel for Eric, but he's a consultant. He gets paid to do it, so you can deal with it. Breakout groups on June 8th. On June 17th, Christina and I are going to City Council to present the vision statement for adoption. I'm not sure what the council's policies are right now on attendance. If they're unlimited, then you're all invited to come and support us. If they're not, well, we know that you're with us there in spirit. So that'll be happening on the 17th, and I'm sure everything will go just fine. And then our next full team meeting is on June 22nd. And again, we will figure out before then if we're in person or not. Questions, Rachel?
Sorry, Daniel, thank you. Just wanted to circle back, Eric, there was a request that before we have everyone meet within their work groups, if you could provide each group with the idea of what deliverables they need by the end of that work group, and we'll send to us, just to give them a better sense of what needs to happen by the end of those.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll send out an instruction memo and any background material. One of the things that you will receive in advance is that list of concepts, so that you'll have that as fodder. But yes, I'll send that along with what the deliverables should look like.
Marta, you have a question?
Yes, I want to connect at some point with Seth and perhaps Janssen Strategies. The commission that I chair for the City Commission on Access, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, sounds like several members have more feedback on how we can maximize outreach for the next round of soliciting public feedback. And so they want to talk with you guys, which is a good thing, right? Yeah. But just heads up. And I think if there's additional feedback from anybody on this task force right now about increased outreach, I encourage everybody to connect with Seth and the team before we go out for that. You know, like we talked about extending the period from September 7th to 17th. I'm all for it. What else can we do? So thank you.
Other questions, comments? Eric, any final words?
No, just, thank you to the group for everything that you're doing and being at these meetings, and everybody is working very constructively, and it's paying off. So I think we're headed in the right direction and we're on schedule.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will see you all in a couple of weeks with a good chance of being in person. Bye.